The first sound is water, slow, heavy, old. Then her voice drifts through it like a confession pulled from the bottom of the bayou. "We didn't choose the water," she whispers. "The water chose us." The camera lingers on her thin hands, folded in her lap, pale against the dark wood of the interview room. She never looks up, not yet. This is Evelyn Mireaux, the last surviving daughter of the people locals only ever called the Swampbloods, a family whispered about in parish bars, dismissed in official records, and hidden for more than 120 years deep in the Louisiana Delta, where maps stop and mud begins. But tonight, their story finally rises to the surface. And if you found your way here, you already know. The truth lives in the shadows. Welcome to Underbelly Bloodline, where history bleeds and the past never stays buried. Subscribe if you dare and step deeper into the dark. The narration tightens. For generations, the Swampbloods were rumored to be interrelated, bound by bloodlines that never left the waterlogged compound they built on sinking stilts, a closed world, a sealed lineage, no outsiders, no fresh names, no new faces. But the question is not how they lived. It's why none of them live anymore. Only Evelyn remains, and even she seems unsure how much of the truth belongs to memory, and how much belongs to myth. She speaks in fragments, half glimpses. Her voice drifts like someone recalling another person's life. "They left me behind," she murmurs. Or maybe, "I left them." Her statements don't match the sheriff's recovered reports, not even close. Because while Evelyn claims they passed peacefully in the water, decades of disappearance wrapped in a single moment of surrender, the parish record suggests something far more unsettling. A rusted recorder clicks on. A sheriff's voice breaks through the static. There were no bodies, but there was blood, a lot of it. Evelyn doesn't react. Her eyes remain fixed on the floor, unblinking, as if she's listening to something else entirely, something moving beneath the water. And that is where our story begins, with a survivor who can't or won't tell the same tale twice, and a family whose legacy was carved not in stone, but in blood, mud, and the silence of the Louisiana swamp. The swamp opens before us like an old wound, wide, wet, and breathing. Here, the water doesn't flow. It waits. Thick as syrup, green as bruised skin, it clings to the cypress roots curling out of the earth like ancient claws trying to pull the living down with the dead. This is where the Swampbloods built their world. Evelyn's voice returns, softer now, as if remembering a dream she's not sure she wants back. "It was peaceful then," she says, "before the rot found us." Her memories paint an early life so gentle it feels suspiciously polished. Warm mornings, fresh-caught catfish. Her mother humming a tune that kept the darkness away. But the smile she offers doesn't match the tremor in her hands. A lantern flickers. The scene shifts to a faded family photograph recovered from the compound. 8 figures standing shoulder to shoulder, faces blurring into one another, same jawline. Same brow, same pale eyes that seem to follow the lens with unsettling recognition. Everyone looks related. Everyone looks the same. Evelyn identifies them easily. Too easily. "That's Mama," she whispers. Then later, "No, wait, that was Grandmama's dress." Her contradictions slip by like minnows in dark water. Inside the abandoned house, investigators found a wooden door carved with tally marks. Hundreds of them, gouged deep, as if someone had been counting days, or children. Evelyn claims it was just a game, something her brothers scratched when they were bored, but locals remember differently. A shrimper named Hollis Bro stares into the camera, uneasy. "They were quiet folk," he says. Quiet, but wrong, like they were waiting on something that never came. Another neighbor, an old woman with river water eyes, speaks more carefully. "I saw one of their boys once," she mutters. Tall, thin thing. Saw him again years later. Same clothes, same face. Didn't look a day older. When asked if she's certain, she falls silent. "Some families don't change," she finally whispers. "Not in the right ways." Back in the interview room, Evelyn folds her arms as if cold. "Mama used to braid my hair every night," she says gently. Then, moments later, "Grandmama did it too," or maybe it was the same person. Her eyes drift toward the darkened hallway behind the cameras, as though someone else might step out of the past to correct her, and the swamp holds its breath. There's a moment in every investigation where the ground softens, where the truth stops holding your weight. For the Swampblood case, that moment comes the second Evelyn begins to speak about her childhood with certainty, because nothing she says survives the light. "I never left the house," she insists, fingers tightening around the hem of her sleeve. But then, without pausing, she describes the old shrimping nets that hang from the branches along Gatorhook Bend, a place only visible by boat, and nearly an hour's paddle from her family compound. She knows the color of the rust on the nets. She knows which ones belonged to the Duvall brothers before the hurricane took them. She knows details she could not possibly know, unless she'd gone out there herself, or unless someone carried her there. The locals begin to speak, their voices drifting through the damp night like warnings carried on fog. "They kept to themselves," says a former schoolteacher. "But those children, none of them ever stepped foot in my classroom." A crab trapper leans against his truck, cigarette trembling between his fingers. "Folks said they were, mixed up in their own blood. Brothers and sisters raising more brothers and sisters. Folks saw babies who looked too much alike. Then there's the midwife, pale, brittle, eyes set deep. I seen the swamp woman," she whispers. "Came to me late nights with jars of medicine she said she made herself. Never talked much, but the way she watched you, like she was studying your bones." Rumors tighten, and then the recovered documents confirm the unease. A stack of parish birth records, wet, warped, half-molded, shows the Mireaux family tree looping back on itself again and again. Uncles becoming fathers, aunts becoming mothers twice over, generations folding inward like a dying star. But when asked directly, Evelyn blinks, puzzled. "We weren't kin like that," she says softly. "I never heard that word in my house." Another contradiction, another crack in her story. As the sheriff flips through the evidence, a final audio file plays, grainy, distant, recorded on an old field mic in the 1980s. A child's voice hums a lullaby, the same lullaby Evelyn claims her mother sang to her. Except this recording was made 30 years before she was born. The humming fades, the swamp grows still, and the truth circles closer. The swamp air presses against you like wet velvet. Every breath carries the scent of decay and rot, mingled with the faint sweetness of river moss. Evelyn leans forward, her voice low, trembling as if the shadows in the room themselves are listening. "Storm season," she whispers. "That's when everything changed." Her hands twist in her lap. Mama, or maybe Grandmama, she would make us practice the water, always watching, always ready. The children, she says, were rotated between caretakers, each adult assigned to watch, measure, record every detail of their growth. Some days were for learning, she claims. Others were for tests no outsider would understand. Investigator notes later reveal locked rooms in the compound, tiny spaces with heavy doors never opened. Inside, the walls were etched with tallies, names, and symbols that no one alive could decipher. Parish floorboards bore spirals and scratches deep enough to catch a fingernail, like the house itself was bleeding secrets. The naming patterns repeat through generations, Evelyn says. Names passed like heirlooms, shifted only slightly for variety. There were too many Thomases, too many Lydias, and always a child named after the water. It kept the line predictable, she says, almost proudly. Sheriff audio logs cut through her memories. Rope cordoned the rooms, symbols carved deep into the floor. Evidence of planning, ritualistic perhaps, but no witnesses could explain why. She swallows hard, her hands clutch her knees, then softly a slip of despair. "The twins," she begins, and her voice breaks tears well. Her face flushes pale. I don't know where they went. There's no record of twins, no paperwork, no census, nothing but Evelyn's wavering memory. And yet, the grief is undeniable, a shard of truth or a hallucination of guilt. The line blurs. The interview camera pans to the compound sketches later recovered by the sheriff. A small doorway in the cabin's far corner, reinforced with iron. Claw marks pitted the wood on the inside. They called it the safe room, Evelyn whispers, a shiver traveling up her spine. But sometimes, I think it was never meant to be safe at all. The room is silent except for her ragged breathing. Outside, the swamp hums, indifferent. And somewhere beneath the water, the family's secrets remain, coiled, waiting, just beyond reach and just beyond comprehension. The descent has begun, and the first true fractures of the swamp bloodline are already visible, etched in memory, in blood, and in the water that claims them. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of wet cypress and mud, heavy and suffocating. The coroner's voice trembled over the phone when he finally spoke. Multiple births, same parents, 3 generations. It was a revelation that should have shattered Evelyn. It should have turned her pale eyes to glass, made her gasp, made her tremble, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned back in the chair, crossed her arms, and let out a short, irritated laugh. "Y'all keep asking the wrong questions," she said, voice steady, almost bored. "It's not the bloodline you should be looking at." The tape clicks again, and we hear the rustle of papers. A hidden journal recovered from a rotting chest in the swamp cabin. Its pages yellowed, the ink smudged from years of humidity. The matriarch's handwriting winds across the paper like a river, precise, deliberate, almost ceremonial. She wrote of pairing cousins to keep the blood pure for the water. Every union recorded, every birth predicted, every child counted. The family was not merely secluded, they were meticulously engineered, generation after generation, to survive in isolation. Evelyn's reaction is almost casual. "I wasn't part of that," she insists, curling her hands into fists. But documents tell a different story. Her name appears twice in the ledger, under 2 mothers, as though the line itself could not decide who she belonged to. The psychological weight of that knowledge is not on her face. It's in the room's stillness, in the way she pauses, in the faint twitch of a fingertip. Outside, the swamp whispers. The water rises slightly against the cypress roots, black and patient. And then, footage recovered from an abandoned search reveals something even more haunting. A crib, waterlogged, lodged in the tangled roots of a fallen tree. It floats, suspended in the murky water, rocking gently as if lulled by the tide itself. No child inside. Only the memory of a child. And Evelyn doesn't flinch. She doesn't reach for it. She just whispers, "They never meant for anyone to find that." The camera lingers on the crib, on the roots curling like fingers, grasping at the surface. The rain begins again. Slow, relentless. Some truths, it seems, break the world quietly. Others break the world by simply existing. And in the Swampblood's legacy waits, still engineered, still hidden, and still haunting every ripple of the water. The breaking point has come, and no one leaves unchanged. The wind had teeth that night. Hurricane Harlow tore across the delta, bending trees into the black water, lifting roofs like paper, drowning the world in relentless rain. Locals remember the Mireaux compound with a mixture of awe and fear. "They didn't evacuate," one shrimper says, voice low, eyes narrowing. "They prepared." Prepared, they said, in ways no one could explain. Lanterns burned in every window. Doors were bolted from the inside. A bell rang, metallic, high-pitched, over and over, through the night, and some swear it was never attached to a clock or a tower, only the hands of the family themselves. Evelyn's voice trembles as she recalls the storm, fractured and disjointed. Doors, slamming, bells, ringing, someone screaming. She pauses, inhales sharply. The water's choosing. Each word is like a fragment of glass sharp. Unfinished. The timeline she describes doesn't match the sheriff's reports. Harlow officially struck 2 days later. Yet, in her recollection, the storm began inside the house, inside the walls, inside the minds of the children. Old police tapes add a chilling rhythm to the memory, static hums punctuated by a faint whisper that seems to shift as you listen. One must live. To remember. No context, no explanation. Just the cadence of a family's secret echoing through the microphones of those who came too late. The spiral begins to appear everywhere, carved into the floorboards, scratched beneath a loose plank. At first, subtle, almost innocent, but then unmistakable, deliberate. The camera lingers on the grooves, circular, endless, drawing the eye deeper. And then the necklace. Around Evelyn's neck, a spiral of dark metal rests just above her collarbone. It gleams in the dim light of the interview room, the same symbol found in the cabin, the same symbol scratched into the floor where generations of Mireaux children once walked, learned, and vanished. Her eyes follow it as if it speaks to her. She doesn't touch it. She doesn't explain it. She only says quietly, almost to herself, "They're still in the water, watching." The camera pans to the outside, to the black delta, rising with the storm water. And for a moment, you hear the lullaby again, the one hummed decades before Evelyn was born, layered over the wind, over the trees, over the pulse of fear itself. A spiral, a storm, a heartbeat. The Mireaux legacy doesn't just survive, it coils, and it waits. The room is quiet except for the soft scrape of paper against wood. Evelyn holds a letter, fragile, yellowed, its edges curling as if the swamp itself had breathed onto it. The date, scrawled in looping ink, 1972. Her fingers trace the words before reading aloud. The blood must remain pure. Any dilution weakens us. The water will not forgive impurity. Her voice trembles, but not from fear. There is nostalgia here, a soft ache in the marrow. She pauses, swallowing, and continues. I will protect them, guide them, teach them, until the water calls them home. The camera lingers on her eyes, faint shadows beneath pale skin. She looks small, fragile, yet carries the weight of decades no one else could ever bear. Every word is heavy with guilt and pride intertwined, a confession not to the authorities, but to the river itself. Outside, an old fisherman leans back in his chair, voice gravelly as if dredged from the depths of the delta. I saw him once, he murmurs, that night, pale figures wading into the storm water, like ghosts but alive. The water took them, but they weren't scared. They belonged there. Evelyn nods, eyes distant. Her lips part, quiet but firm. They went home, that's all. It's a statement that doesn't comfort, not really. There's no triumph in her tone, only recognition, only acceptance. The water is not a threat. It is inheritance. The archival footage glimmers on the screen, black and white frames of cypress roots tangled in currents, the tide rising over abandoned stilts. The wind carries the faintest trace of a lullaby, layered over the rush of water, almost indistinguishable from memory. A slow pan reveals the final image, the letter lying beside a necklace, a spiral, darkened by age, identical to the one Evelyn wears. Circles within circles, a line connecting past, present, and the invisible. She whispers almost to herself. Some bloodlines drown, ours simply returned. The words hang in the humid air, heavy as storm clouds. They settle on the viewer's chest, pressing, insistent. History is not always written in stone. Sometimes it flows, unseen, carving its path beneath the surface, shaping lives, shaping fates. And the Swampbloods, for all their secrets, all their disappearances, all their contradictions, are not gone. They never were. They are water, they are memory, they are inheritance. The revelation is complete, yet incomplete. The truth lingers in the damp air, curling around you like mist, refusing to be fully understood. The air is thick, heavy with the smell of mud and rot. Rain drips from the eaves of the cabin, falling in uneven rhythms that echo like distant heartbeat. Investigators descend into the hidden cellar beneath the old stilts, flashlights slicing through the darkness. The water is waist-deep, cold and unyielding, wrapping around legs like grasping fingers. What they find is a graveyard of memory. Children's clothes, faded and stiff, float in the stagnant water. Bones, fragile and unmarked, lie half-submerged alongside broken toys. The remnants of laughter long extinguished. And there are 3 small beds, carved roughly, labeled only as A, B, and C. The weight of the discovery presses down on the men and women who enter. The camera lingers on a tiny wooden chair overturned in the mud, the cracked porcelain doll staring blankly from its side, as though silently witnessing decades of secrecy and sorrow. Evelyn sits in the interview room, her hands folded tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. She doesn't flinch when shown the images. She doesn't gasp. Instead, a quiet, brittle whisper escapes her lips. They weren't supposed to find those. Her eyes betray no fear, only a deep, distant sorrow. Like the echo of a grief she has carried alone for decades, she rocks slightly in her chair, as if the movement itself could steady the weight of her memories. The detectives exchange glances. The room seems to grow smaller, the walls pressing closer. The sound of dripping water and the soft shuffle of boots on wet wood dominate the silence. Every object in that submerged cellar is a fragment of a family's unraveling, a testament to innocence stolen and forgotten. Outside, the swamp is still. The cypress roots rise from black water, knotted and gnarled, like fingers pointing toward the sky in accusation or mourning. The wind is absent. Only the quiet remains. Finally, the sheriff's voice cuts through the stillness, calm but unyielding. We still don't know how many children lived there, or died there. The words hang in the air, cold and final, yet unfinished. They drift across the surface of the waterlogged tragedy, settling into every corner of the viewer's mind. The Swampbloods' legacy is not measured in the living, but in the echoes of those who never left, whose names and faces remain submerged in the mud, in the dark, and in memory. And as the camera pans back to the water above the cellar, the silence is deafening. The collapse is total. The weight of history presses down, relentless, leaving nothing untouched. The world outside the swamp seems impossibly quiet after the storm of discovery. Evelyn, the last known survivor, is released into state care, her small frame swallowed by oversized blankets and sterile hospital walls. She moves through the corridors like a ghost, unclaimed and only partially understood. Even her identity is uncertain. Fingerprints, birth records, and faces in faded photographs provide fragments. Never a whole DNA tests are inconclusive. The lines of kinship twist and loop in ways that baffle experts. Overlapping generations, repeated pairings, a bloodline folded back onto itself like a labyrinth. Each result deepens the uncertainty, leaving her alone in a world that wants answers she cannot, or will not, give. Some people see her as a victim, a child stolen by secrecy, molded by fear, haunted by things she could not control. Others whisper she may have been an accomplice, carrying out her mother's instructions in silence, a living piece of the Swampblood puzzle. Her calm demeanor fuels speculation, her eyes hiding centuries of memory in their pale depths. Investigators uncover small remnants still lodged in the swamp, an infant's bone fragment, etched with the spiral symbol seen throughout the family's history. The tiny carving is delicate, deliberate, a whisper across generations, a mark of inheritance that refuses to fade. The waterlogged past lingers in every shadow, every root, every ripple of the cypress-lined waters. Evelyn sits quietly in her room, rocking gently, humming the faint lullaby she claims to remember. Her lips barely move, but the tune drifts across the sterile walls, bringing the swamp back into the sterile light of the modern world. She does not cry, does not speak of the cellar, the beds, or the drowned crib. Those memories are hers alone, an inheritance too heavy for anyone else. And then the final image lingers. Archival footage, shaky and intimate, shows her small figure slipping quietly from the care facility at dawn. She walks toward the swamp, barefoot and unhurried, mist curling around her like smoke. The rising sun glints off the water, but she does not pause. She returns to the delta as though it calls to her, a place of memory, of blood, and of the secrets no one else will ever understand. The aftermath is not calm, it is hollow, echoing, waiting. The past is not gone. It breathes in the fog, in the roots, in the spiral carved into generations. And somewhere, beneath the surface, it waits for her, and for those who might follow. The swamp exhales in slow, wet pulses, fog curling over the black water, like a ghost that refuses to leave. A century of silence presses against the cypress, against the roots, against memory itself. What survives a century of isolation? The blood or the memory? Evelyn's figure is small against the endless delta, her pale skin glinting in the dim light of early morning. Her voice comes across the final recording, fragile but resolute. They'll come back when the water calls again. The words hang in the air, suspended, as if the swamp itself repeats them. The spiral etched into floorboards, carved onto bone fragments, and worn around her neck becomes a rhythm, a heartbeat that pulses beneath every recollection. The lullaby she hums drifts through the mist, blending with the memory of the storm, of doors slamming, of bells ringing in the darkness, a melody that spans decades, generations, and secrets that should never have been touched. Her whispered recollections twist through the camera's lens, names repeated, rearranged, children lost, and found in cycles too deliberate to be coincidence, every name a tether, every symbol a map. And yet, no one can follow the trail completely. It evaporates into fog and water, leaving only questions. The delta stretches outward, black, infinite, holding the remnants of a family the world will never fully understand. Evelyn's shadow merges with the water as she moves along the banks, barefoot and unhurried, leaving footprints that vanish almost immediately in the soft mud. The storm has passed, but its presence lingers, embedded in memory, in symbols, in the song of the swamp. The camera pans slowly to the spiral, the rocking crib, the tally marks, and the distant bells once rung by unseen hands. Everything connects in a pattern that the mind can sense but never fully grasp. Each echo of laughter, each whisper of grief, every breath of wind through the cypress is a reminder that some legacies are too persistent to die quietly. And in that last lingering moment, the screen fades to black. The voice returns, soft, almost imperceptible. Maybe she survived the storm. Or maybe the storm survived in her. The words reverberate in the viewer's mind, a final echo of blood, water, and memory intertwined. The Swampbloods are gone, yet everywhere. The delta waits. The lullaby waits. The spiral waits. And for anyone who listens closely, the water will always be calling.